Scrappy has been on a downward spiral since Bambi left his life, according to sources close to the rapper. In a tragic turn of events, he has reportedly attempted suicide. The industry has been rocked by rumors of a heartbreaking appeal for assistance, and family members are rushing. After all the heartache, betrayals, and the never-ending turmoil, Scrappy is at his breaking point. He looks to have reached his breaking point. Fans are left wondering how this occurred, whether this is really Scrappy's last moment, and most importantly, whether Bambi will step in before it's too late, as friends are calling him anxiously. You won't believe what we're about to divulge, so pay attention. Although Scrappy was known for his ability to overcome obstacles, something was different this time. He was ultimately overcome by the weight of his loneliness, treachery, and heartbreak, and the agony seemed intolerable. People who are close to the rapper now admit the possibility that he may have done the unthinkable. It all started when Bambi, his darling, left. Scrappy wasn't handling the breakup well, and although their relationship had been a frenzy of disagreements and makeup, this time it felt permanent. His pals observed that his previously amusing manner had transformed to one of cryptic messages that alluded to his intense mental distress. "I just don't know how to move forward," Scrappy allegedly confided in a significant other. When he published a string of Instagram stories, each darker than the previous, after a late-night talk, admirers began to worry that something was amiss. Everyone was drawn to one post in particular, a black screen with the words, "What's the point of it all?" written in white. His followers quickly bombarded his direct message service with encouraging messages, telling him to keep going. But they had no idea that things were far worse than they had anticipated, and Scrappy's closest friends and family knew he was not. One of his longtime friends, who asked to remain anonymous, described the moment they realized something was seriously wrong. "I went to check on him, and man, I didn't recognize him. His house was a mess, bottles everywhere, blinds shut tight. He had been acting erratically over the past few weeks, missing important meetings, and even ghosting some of his closest friends. But the biggest red flag was that he started drinking heavily, something he had once vowed never to do again. He said, 'I don't believe I can do this any longer. Bro, I'm exhausted.'" In a heartbreaking Instagram live session, his mother, Mama D, was among the first to publicly acknowledge that something was seriously wrong, asking fans to send prayers. "Y'all, I need y'all to lift my baby up," she begged. "I just want this pain to stop. Scared me." I tried to help him change his mindset, but I could see in his eyes that he wasn't okay. And then came the night that changed everything. Apparently, on a quiet evening, Scrappy locked himself in his house and would not answer the phone or text. His closest friends realized something was very wrong and drove to his house, beating on the door until he let them in. But after what seemed like forever, one of them decided to call for help. "We were yelling his name, bang, on the door, because we had no idea what else to do, but it was just silent. I swear, I thought my heart was going to burst inside those walls. When paramedics and authorities finally made it inside, they found everything that left everyone stunned. Scrappy was unconscious, his body limp on the floor, pills all over him, and a bottle of liquor overturned on the table. Immediately, medics began working to stabilize him while his friends stood there with frozen tears in their eyes. And one of them later admitted that we kept calling his name in the hopes that he would open. The real question was still whether Scrappy would survive. And if he did, would this be the wake-up call he needed? As Scrappy was taken to emergency care, friends close to him disclosed that he had been spiraling for weeks. but no one had realized just how far gone he was. When the news broke, social media was ablaze with worried fans, sending love and support messages, hoping that this wasn't the end for Scrappy. He was drowning in his thoughts every day, the source said, and he would talk about how he felt inadequate, and that no matter what we told him, it was like his mind was already made up. The doctors did everything they could to stabilize him, but the situation was dire, and it was a race against time. And for his loved ones, those moments felt like an eternity. Mama D was seen looking distressed as she arrived at the hospital, pleading. Fans continued to talk about the situation, and social media was buzzing with prayers and support for Scrappy. What do you think? Will Scrappy find the strength to move forward? Or is there still hope for him and Bambi to reunite? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest drama, don't forget to follow the medical staff for updates on her son's condition today. Fans were shaken to their core, and social media was flooded with messages of concern, accompanied by hashtags like #. Meanwhile, Bambi received the news, and according to sources, she was devastated despite their history with Rocky. Although she had never wanted this for Scrappy, she was in complete shock, and an insider revealed that she might not have been with him anymore. But that didn't mean she stopped caring. She felt guilty, thinking perhaps if she had handled things differently, he wouldn't have gotten to this point. As everyone waited for updates inside the hospital, they made it clear that the next few hours were crucial. If Scrappy survived, he would have a long road to recovery ahead of him. But if he didn't, the world would be saying goodbye. Prayer for Scrappy is trending nationwide, and some celebrities have even taken to their platforms to show their support and sadness. Mental health is real, y'all. We got to check in on our people praying for Scrappy right now. One well-known rapper tweeted, "Every minute felt like a lifetime in the waiting room, and friends, family, and fans were holding their breath, hoping that Scrappy would wake up or that this was the end." His mother, Mama D, was sitting by his bedside, holding his hand, and Scrappy lay in the hospital bed, his body weak, his mind hazy with pain and regret. The room was eerily quiet, save for the steady beep of the monitors, and that child was holding on tight, as if fearing that letting go would mean losing him forever. Even as she whispered words of comfort, she knew that this battle was far from over. Outside the hospital, the world had exploded in chaos, and fans, celebrities, and fellow artists took to social media to flood the internet with messages of concern, support, and speculation. One post read, "We love you. Scrappy, stay strong." Another was more accusatory, asking where Bambi was when he most needed her. Her heart had been broken by seeing her son in such a vulnerable state, and she had prayed nonstop, started, and fingers were pointing everywhere. Bambi herself had been caught in the storm, and reporters were after her, and her phone was constantly buzzing with calls and messages. People wanted to know if she had talked to Scrappy before the incident, and if she knew how much he was going through. But Bambi refused to be drawn into the chaos, and she was secretly struggling with her own feelings. Yil asked her if she had pushed him too far or if she had been too cold in their last conversation. Hours turned into days, and finally, Scrappy began to regain his strength, but the emotional scars were far more severe than the physical ones, so a therapist was brought in to encourage him to talk about them. He saw the laughter, the arguments, the love that had once burned so brightly, but was now reduced to ashes. Mama D's anxious face, Diamond's terrified expression when she found him, the paramedics racing to save him, and then darkness, a deep abyss that threatened to swallow him whole. His eyes were glassy with unshed tears, and he resisted answering the questions quickly with fake laughter and hollow assurances that he was a good man going through a difficult time. Scrappy said, adding, "But Mama D was no fool. She had seen her son's lowest point and knew that pretending wouldn't help him. Instead, she encouraged him to let it all out. It seems like I'm just going through the motions every day. We need you to hear, Scrappy. You matter. It hurts, baby, but you have to find a way to live for yourself. Not for Bambi, not for anyone else, just for you." This message lingered in the air, heavy with truth, and even though Scrappy knew she was right, something in her voice gave him a glimmer of hope, a tiny flicker of light in the darkness. As the days passed, more people came to see him, including his close friends, industry colleagues, and even people he hadn't spoken to in years. Bambi's voice was scratchy, and he took a big breath before answering, "Scrappy, I never wanted this for you." When he did, he asked, "Why does it feel like you did?" Years of injured love and longing were reflected in his comments. When Bambi eventually arrived at the hospital, the room fell silent as their eyes met, and her countenance became unreadable. Scrappy's heart thumped in his chest as they looked at each other. Scrappy's fist clenched, his emotions a tangled mess of anger, sorrow, and yearning. "Then why did you leave me? If you knew I couldn't live without you, why did you let me go?" Bambi sighed, looking down, because love shouldn't be toxic. "Scrappy and I were hurting each other, and I wasn't sure how to mend it. Thought we were doing what was best for us both, but I never meant for you to feel like this." Her voice broke, and she turned away, blinking back tears. "I don't know what will happen next, but I do know one thing. You don't get to give up, Scrappy. You don't get to leave like this. You are loved. You are needed." The air between them was heavy with unspoken words, unfinished conversations, and a history too complicated to untangle in one night. Finally, Bambi reached out and lightly brushed her fingers against his. Scrappy swallowed hard, his vision blurred by the agony, and he knew deep down that she was right. Their love had been passionate but destructive for a long time. Bambi squeezed his hand tenderly after she had cried, explaining that you have to give yourself time to heal. As she stood up to leave, Scrappy felt a shift in himself. Maybe it was acceptance or closure, or maybe it was the beginning of a new chapter in which he learned to live for himself, even if it meant learning how to do it without her. Scrappy took a deep breath as the door closed behind her, feeling a little lighter than before. Not quite okay yet, but for the first time, he was able to move independently. His phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends, family, and fans, and he sat in his dark room with the weight of his emotions pressing down on him like a crushing force. Everyone was worried and asking questions, but no one could understand the emptiness that had consumed him since Bambi left the once lively Scrappy, who was known for his energy and charisma, now staring blankly at the walls while he drowned in memories of the love he had lost. Mama D had tried everything she had called. After Scrappy posted an enigmatic message on his social media, fans began to speculate that friends were reaching out to everyone that Scrappy had been close to. He had been a fighter all his life, facing challenges head-on, but this time was different. This wasn't a battle he knew how to win. The thought of Bambi moving on and living her life without him broke him apart piece by piece. "I don't know how to do this without you." Scrappy, who was experiencing a severe case of depression, called Bambi in the middle of the night. His voice trembled as he spoke honestly and unfilteredly, his heart pounding in his chest. But Bambi, despite her sympathy, remained firm and said, "Scrappy, we can't keep doing this. I must find my serenity, and you must find yours." The call ended, and Scrappy sat with his phone, hands shaking, feeling beyond repair. The next morning, Scrappy's close friend and fellow rapper Diamond arrived at his house after receiving a series of alarming texts. What she found sent shivers down her spine. Scrappy was barely conscious, his face pale, his body weak, empty bottles scattered across the floor, a haunting testament to his despair. Diamond, in a panic, called 911 immediately, her hands shaking as she begged for help, and paramedics arrived minutes later, rushing Scrappy to the hospital for treatment. Social media erupted as fans posted messages of support and hope for the music industry on timelines, and even his ex-boyfriends came forward to express their love and concern. Inside the hospital room, Scrappy lay unconscious, with a machine that was monitoring his vitals beeping steadily. Mama D refused to leave his side, keeping her hands clasped together and whispering, "Lord, don't take my baby." She was crying because she was deeply hurt to see her son in such a vulnerable state. For hours, doctors battled to keep him stable, and the tension in the air was choking everyone as they waited for an update or a sign that Scrappy would recover. At last, there was movement, a slow blink, a faint whisper, and the room was filled with relief. But the battle was far from over. Scrappy's road to recovery would be long and difficult, and the pain of losing Bambi still loomed over him like a dark cloud. But perhaps in that moment, surrounded by love and support, a glimmer of hope appeared. Mama D sat next to him, holding his hand tightly, her eyes full of relief and worry. "Baby, you scared me to death," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Scrappy was lying in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind a flurry of emotions. The weight of what had just happened set in, and the near-death experience that had shaken not only him, but everyone who loved him. His body felt weak and drained from the trauma, but the pain in his chest had nothing to do with the physical. Instead, it was his heart breaking beyond recognition. Emotional response: "What were you thinking, Scrappy?" "I wasn't thinking, Mama. I just felt like I had nothing left." Although it wasn't that easy, Scrappy had spent months trying to move on and rebuild himself after losing Bambi. But no matter how hard he tried, the emptiness remained. There was a void. He couldn't seem to fill the door to this. "You have so much to live for. Look around you. Your family, friends, and fans all love you. You can't let this break you. Why are you here?" The hospital room opened, and to his surprise, Bambi walked in. She looked unsure, almost nervous, but her eyes were definitely sad. Scrappy heard what had happened, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension was heavy, with years of love and pain hanging between them like an unspoken weight. Scrappy swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. Bambi groaned and stepped closer because, despite everything, "I still care about you. I don't want to see you like this." Scrappy laughed bitterly. Bambi's face softened, and she touched Scrappy's. "I didn't leave because I no longer loved you. Rather, I left because I couldn't continue to live that way, since we were poisonous to one another and continued to harm each other. That does not imply, however, that I want this for you." Scrappy closed his eyes and listened to her words. In his weakest moment, Mama D cleared her throat, but he wanted to be angry and push her away because he knew deep down that she was right, and that they had gone through so much that their own demons had driven them apart. After a moment of hesitation, Bambi nodded and said, "I can't promise anything, but I can be here as a friend." Scrappy didn't want it, but maybe he needed the opportunity to rebuild, not just for Bambi, but also for himself. In spite of the uncertainty, suffering, and recovery that lay ahead, one thing was certain: Scrappy was not alone, and for the first time in a long time, that gave him hope. The tragic tale of today raises significant issues, such as whether Scrappy will truly be able to begin a new chapter in his life. Is there a way to live without Bambi, or will this anguish never leave his heart? The entire situation continues to worry fans, and there are many prayers and expressions of support for him on social media. How do you feel? Does Scrappy have any chance of getting back together with Bambi? Or will he be able to move on? Leave a comment below with your opinions. To ensure you don't miss a story, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications if you want to stay up to date on all the most recent drama.